Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, every day since Bryan Kohberger has taken the plea and has been remanded to the Idaho State Prison, new things pop up, and one of the things that I thought was extremely interesting, and we did another show on this, the digital versus the physical evidence against Bryan Kohberger, because there was so much digital evidence vis-a-vis his cell phone. And many areas that, because there was no trial in this case, well, all of this information would have come out because it would have been presented as evidence for the prosecution. We may never find out all of the evidence that the prosecution had. Geofencing that can pull up all kinds of electronic devices used at specific times at a specific place. We never heard any reference to that by the prosecution. We know certain things, and I'm going to go into it in a little more depth about on the mornings of the murders, how Bryan Kohberger turned his phone off at a certain hour. And I'll give you that exact time when we get more in depth with this. And then once the murders were completed, he turned his cell phone back on. That in itself, anyone that's worked cases like these, anyone that's been a cop, a detective, has worked these murder cases, know that that is extremely damning evidence. And then we see all of the video of that white Hyundai Elantra. 3 times it passes, the 3-point turn he makes. He passes the location on 3 separate occasions. And then once the murders are complete, he speeds away from there, speeds away from the location. None of these things are smoking gun evidence in themselves. However, they're strong circumstantial evidence. And for all you people out there that was saying the Hyundai was green, go back to the drawing board, all right? Go back to crime fighting, crime investigation 101, because you got that really, really wrong. And you threw thousands of people off by reporting that nonsense. We never wavered with our belief. And look, in the first week, the Moscow police said they were looking for a white Hyundai Elantra, and they put it out there that they believed it belonged. They wanted to speak to a witness. They knew full well they were looking for a suspect, but they put it out there that it was the vehicle belonging to a witness. So we're going to get more in depth into this today. So hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your cup of coffee, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your dreams. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor, FanDuel, out of the Believe Network, is a sponsor of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. FanDuel is a legal and regulated online sports betting platform operating in the United States. It allows users to bet real money on the outcomes of sports events across major leagues, such as the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and of course, more. FanDuel also offers daily fantasy sports and online casino games in certain states. What FanDuel offers? Sportsbook, bet on sports games and player props. Daily fantasy sports, draft a lineup under a salary cap and win based on player performance. Casino, online slots, blackjack, roulette, etc. in select states. Live betting, place bets in real time during games. FanDuel, the sponsor of Police Off the Cuff. So we're going to talk a little bit. Everyone is so interested in Kohberger's prison life. And we did a show on that the other night. We'll talk about that a little bit, but we want to talk about, what got him here? What got him to plead guilty? What was it? Well, what it was overwhelming evidence against him. Bryan Kohberger prepared for the quadruple Idaho murders. He didn't just Google cases. He studied serial killers. He studied criminology on how to get away with this. Turning off his phone, turning on his phone, all of those things. Recon, 23 times he had been to that house. He had watched the house. He knew that on the second floor, that sliding glass door would be open. How did he know that? Well, that's where everyone else was entering the house that didn't live there. You didn't have to be a rocket science, right? At 2:54 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, and we know that to be the infamous day of these quadruple murders, Bryan Kohberger's phone went dark. The battery hadn't died, and this is coming right from an article in the Independent. And it was silenced on purpose. Wi-Fi and cellular data were disabled. Again, that is a premeditated, purposeful, on purpose. Did he do that? No location tracking was on, and no background activity. A deliberate blackout during the exact window that prosecutors say 4 University of Idaho students were brutally murdered at their off-campus home. 2 hours later, at 4:48 a.m., the phone turned back on. It would be months before investigators fully understood what that gap in activity meant. But to the digital forensic experts tasked by prosecutors with retracing Kohberger's steps for evidence to be used against him in his trial, the silence spoke volumes. What we learned is he prepared. This is according to Heather Barnhart, a digital expert and the senior director of forensic research at Cellbrite. Barnhart and her colleague, Jared Barnhart, head of CX strategy and advocacy at Cellbrite, also a digital forensics expert on the case, was slated to testify at Kohberger's trial before he unexpectedly accepted a plea deal, admitting to the November 2022 quadruple murders and receiving life without parole. So what do all these things mean? The digital red flags. The digital Cellbrite team had uncovered files that were scrubbed from devices. What does that mean? Well, that means he was trying to erase all the incriminating searches, all the incriminating research that he did, searches routed through VPNs, and deep downloads about serial killers, all of which they say painted a chilling picture of obsession and planning. While DNA from the knife sheath ultimately tied Kohberger to the crime scene, it was the voids in his otherwise trackable life that revealed how the killings were premeditated. Forensics analysts revealed that Kohberger's phone had only 4 periods of total inactivity dating back to June 2022. One of those silent moments occurred on the night of the murders. So, yeah, he was planning this in great detail, right? And so were investigators doing their job to show that his phone had never gone dark before that night. So what does that say? Well, it says that he was shutting his phone off with purpose. It wasn't a random power down. It wasn't the battery died. It was he had purposely, premeditatedly shut his phone off so that he could not be tracked by law enforcement. We know Kohberger had long immersed himself in the study of crime. After all, he was a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. He didn't just Google cases. He downloaded full PDFs of case files, not once, but repeatedly. He was downloading detailed reports on serial killers, including Danny Rowling, who was also murdered college students using a similar knife. This wasn't casual browsing. This was meticulous research. So to determine what happened during the 2-hour window on the night of the murder, the Subright team recreated the digital environment and studied call logs. Turning off your phone isn't enough, according to Heather. You have to disable the Wi-Fi, disable cellular, and then power down. And that's what he did. And they discovered in days right before and after the murders, Kohberger disabled Wi-Fi access on his devices and routed his traffic through NordVPN, a tool designed to anonymize online activity. While the act is not criminal, it is abnormal, according to the Subright investigators, Barnhart, right? The Barnharts. So they discovered all of this, and all of this work that we look at, it's very incriminating. It's powerful, powerful evidence. But yet, so many times during this case, we were told that Bryan Kohberger was innocent. Bryan Kohberger had nothing to do with this. Oh, it's just circumstantial evidence. Again, we at Police Off the Cuff, we told many people that circumstantial evidence is very, very, very powerful evidence. I want to go to Court TV and play a little bit of this. And it seems that many people are focusing upon a lot of interest in Bryan Kohberger's stay at Idaho State Prison. Let's play a little bit of this right now.
Hyundai Elantra. Now, the camera was close by, facing away from the victim's house. You can see here where the crime scene was. That surveillance camera is pointing toward two side streets. Now, all this video was obtained by the Idaho statesman, and it was given to them by the Moscow Police Department. Let's watch the first time we see the killer's white Hyundai Elantra pass by at 3:30 a.m. Vinny, you saw it right there. The car was only on screen for roughly 10 seconds. Now the Elantra passes by the surveillance camera 6 more times before we see it the final time. That's obviously when it's speeding off after the murders. Now, we see it at 3:33 a.m. coming down King Road toward the house. We see it again at 3:38 a.m. in the middle of that intersection again, at 3:40 a.m. on King Road, at 3:56 a.m. on King Road. That's a 16-minute gap there. And again at 3:58 a.m. Now let's watch the final approach of the killer's car before he starts trying to park it. Now this is 6 minutes later than what we just saw at 4:04 a.m. Again, this video is given to the Idaho statesman. And then you see it right there. It seems like he came onto King Road a little faster than before during that particular pass. Now, 2 minutes after that, we see the killer do something just a little bit different. At 4:06 a.m., we see the Elantra making that infamous K-turn at that same intersection that we heard about as this investigation unfolded over the past few years. But now we want to show you the final time the Elantra is captured on this surveillance video, when the killer is speeding away from the crime scene after the murders. This is at 4:20 a.m., 14 minutes after we just saw that K-turn. And again, this video given to the Idaho statesman. So
Incriminating? Do you think that was a little bit incriminating? That they, great video, powerful evidence. Not a green Hyundai Elantra. In fact, it was a white Hyundai Elantra, which I don't want to rub it into the people that were saying. I guess I do want to rub it in. But if you were a juror and this case was meticulously presented to you from the prosecutor, And starting out, they talked about the digital evidence, about, I believe it was 02:48 hours, about the cell phone being turned off. 02:48, okay? Excuse me, it was 02:54. The cell phone went dark. Now, that's where, if I was a prosecutor, I would start. And now he's taking the trip to Moscow, Idaho, to, in fact, the vicinity of 1122 King Road, which is the house that used to be called the murder house, right? And then, as a precursor to that, we watch the car, the white Hyundai Elantra, allegedly with Bryan Kohberger inside, pass the camera 6 times. And then when the murders were completed, he speeds off at a high rate of speed, changing his behavior, which shows that something occurred. Something actually happened, didn't it? Something took place. So all of that was extremely, extremely powerful evidence against Bryan Kohberger, as well as all the evidence that and the crime scene photos that the prosecution now, because of the Freedom of Information law, has turned over. And all of these pieces of evidence that we, the general public, were not privy to, now know all about. And that, no doubt, was a reason that Bryan Kohberger and his defense team decided it was probably a good idea to plead guilty, because we're trying to avoid the death penalty. And if we don't plead guilty, there's a pretty damn good chance that he's going to get convicted after trial and face the death penalty. Many people, including, not all, but many of the family members, specifically the Gonsalves family, they were not happy that Bill Thompson, the Latah County prosecutor, did not seek the death penalty. He offered, or when the defense and lead attorney Ann Taylor approached him, they gave this deal to Kohberger: 4 sentences of life without parole, another 10 years for the burglary. But the families, at least 2 out of the 4 families, were not happy with that. They wanted this trial to go through. They wanted it to happen. And it did not go through. It did not happen. So a lot of the information that we would have received, we didn't get it because the trial never went through. But now it's coming out, and it seems like more people are concerned with Kohberger's stay in prison rather than all of the evidence on this case. Let me play this from Crime Fix.
Bryan Kohberger is having a rough time adjusting to life behind prison walls. Someone in the know says he's upset about being harassed by other inmates. I have the scoop and what one prison expert has to say about the claims.
And the guy's in prison. He killed 4 kids. What does he expect?
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Bryan Kohberger is an admitted mass murderer. There's no doubt about it. But at Idaho's maximum security institution, he's simply known as inmate 163214. But that doesn't mean the other inmates don't know who he is and why he is there. And let me tell you, murdering 4 beautiful college students you've never met doesn't exactly make you a popular guy when it comes to fitting in prison. Yes, prison is full of criminals, but this crime was heinous. It was a heinous, heinous crime. Murdering women and a young man in their sleep and possibly chasing one of them down. It's an act grounded in absolute cowardice. Bryan Kohberger is not a tough guy. He's a coward. who apparently derived some type of pleasure out of attacking defenseless women in their sleep. It's sick. Kohberger admitted to murdering Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences on July 23rd, and he was immediately transferred to Idaho's maximum security institution in Kuna, just south of Boise. It took a little more than a week for prison staff to assess Kohberger. He was moved to J Block, where he is kept in a cell for 23 hours per day. He gets out 1 hour of day for rec time outside in an area like this. And anytime he is moved, Bryan Kohberger is in restraints. He also only gets to shower every other day, which he probably doesn't like. An inmate in the Layton County Jail reported to detectives that Kohberger took hour-long showers each day. He's been described as a clean freak, a bit of a germaphobe. And now there's a report that Kohberger is upset about the conditions in J Block, that inmates are harassing him through the vents, and that he has complained about the treatment to prison staff.
Is anyone really shedding any tears over this guy's treatment in prison? Is anyone feeling bad about how he's being treated? I'm certainly not. It's unbelievable that we're even hearing about this, you know. But because it's such a high-profile case, and because he's going to be in there for the rest of his life, it's a story, you know. And part of the story also that we wanted to talk about was, and we spoke about it the other night when we had Dr. John on correction. Dr. John Lowry was on the show. What will the mechanism be for writers, for scientists that want to interview Bryan Kohberger? Because there's already, as we know, there's already 2 books published on this case, one by Howard Bloom and the other by James Patterson. So do you think that potentially they're already proverbially knocking on the prison's door and asking to be granted an audience with Bryan Kohberger, to be granted an interview? You bet. I'm pretty sure that's happening. And apparently the mechanism for that would be to write a letter or an email to the warden of the prison, to go right to the top of the food chain. And I don't know what the warden's criteria would be to grant an interview with Bryan Kohberger, because isn't that what he wants? You know, isn't that what he wants, to continue to be famous, to get notoriety off this case? I think that's probably what he does want, and many people don't want him to receive that. But that's what's going to happen. Famous authors, TV stations, movies, they're going to be knocking on his door. I'm going to play some of the new crime scene photos in regards that were released in regards to this case.
For the very first time inside the house on King Road, as crime scene photos are released, and that full security video from the house next door shows the eerie moments leading up to the murders of 4 University of Idaho college students. I go through all of it. Also images of the sliding glass door that Bryan Kohberger entered the morning of November 13th, 2022, intent on carrying out murder.
So those are the sliding glass doors in which he gained access to 1122 King Road. And obviously he had reconned to that location 23 times. He knew all about that door. He watched people go in through that door that was potentially never locked. So people that didn't even live in that house would enter that house through that deck and go right into the house.
The photos also show handprints on the back window of the home, but we don't know who those belong to. Now, the Today Show also shared some of these photos from KTVB. One showed Maddie's boots on the ground. You can also see red Solo cups. The photos show a typical college house that one man destroyed, turning it into a horrific crime scene For what reason? We still don't know. And whatever reason he gave would never make sense to any of us. The release of the photos came after this photo of Bryan Kohberger became public. It shows him shortly after his arrest on December 30th, 2022. Pennsylvania State Police raided his parents' home in Pennsylvania. Kohberger was wearing all black that morning. And now the entire video from the house next door to 1122 King Road has been released. The video from 1112 King Road was recorded from this camera. The house is right next door to where Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were murdered. At 3:30 a.m., the white Hyundai.
We watched that. We watched the white Hyundai Elantra. We spoke about how powerful that evidence was. We spoke about how you can not just see the car, but you can see the actions of the car. How it passed the camera 6 times, how it did a K-turn, how when apparently the murders were completed, the killer stormed off, sped off, I should say, sped off and took off to go back to Washington State University upon a drive where undoubtedly Bryan Kohberger got rid of evidence. And one of the things we spoke about during this case was when he was offered the plea. Why wasn't he made to give up the evidence? Why wasn't he made to allocute? Why wasn't he made to say more than one word for each person that he murdered? I found that to be not a good thing. I'll put it that way, that the prosecution really got nothing, and they were holding all the cards, yet it appeared that Bryan Kohberger held the cards because all he had to say was yes, 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 yes. And then when asked if he wanted to make a statement, he stood up and said, I respectfully decline. That guy doesn't even know what the word respect means, obviously, So, folks, Police Off the Cuff is now sponsored by FanDuel. And FanDuel Group, an American gambling company, offers sportsbook, daily fantasy sports, horse racing, and online casino services. Founded in Edinburgh, Scotland in 2009, it became as the news prediction site HubDub before transitioning to its current services. FanDuel's partnered with the NFL, NBA, WNBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and PGA Tour and operates FanDuel Racing and FanDuel Face-Off. So FanDuel, the newest sponsor of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. Folks, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. It's this topic is still, of course, Kohberger is still trending. It's still a lot of interest with all you folks. So we'll be staying on this case as new information comes out. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family, make lots of comments. We appreciate that. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode